Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast with Benji Naesen. I think this is going to be our spiciest couple of podcasts in a while. Absolute GC mayhem in Paris and Tirreno Adriatico stages 7 and 4 respectively. I do want to say before we get into those obviously extremely hyped stages that we produced our Healthy Aging Tour recap. Stages 2 and 3, they're up. They're at the end of the podcast yesterday, and there's a standalone YouTube video, and that was a really exciting end to the GC there as well. Our show partner, Le Col, they're a title sponsor of British Continental Team Drops Le Col. They've got the unofficial world record holder and the hour record on Drops Le Col, and they were fighting to stay in the top 10 on GC. So if you've got a spare hour and you want to watch some good nasty wet weather cobbled racing in the north of the Netherlands, go and catch up on the Healthy Aging Tour. And also Le Col have produced like a mini doco and some background about the opening start to the season for Drops Le Col, so we'll have a link down below for that if you want to check it out. First, we're going to do our Paris stage 7 recap. I said in the preview, this is all Rogler. This looks like so many stages he won last year. Criterium de Dauphiné stage 2, Col de Portet he won, 120k stage, a couple of not hard climbs at the start, just to basically allow a break to form. And the main action of the day was this 16.5k climb at 6.2% to Vol de Blois la Colmiane, 3,600 meters elevation across the stage, apparently. What probability did you have for Roglic winning this stage before the stage, Benji? Did you think Jumbo-Visma cared about it, would pace? Like, what did you think would happen?
I think that somebody would care enough to keep the gap down and try and control it. I thought the break was going to be relatively high when it comes to the amount of people in there, the profile of the riders as well. Pretty solid breakaway riders I expected, but I still expected it to come down to Roglic, and I basically, until the race started, I was shouting at everybody that I saw on the street, Roglic is winning today, Roglic is winning today.
Yeah.
Obviously socially distanced, by the way.
Well, that's a good point going into it, and people can't accuse us of 2020 hindsight. We both said this on the pod, I've said this in previews. We said, if the break doesn't win, which was a possibility, that has to be acknowledged, I think I gave it like a 90% chance of Roglic winning out of the GC group. So his odds were like 230. So it's either half a break wins, and then if it half, Roglic wins. But a really strong break did go with a lot of the riders we expected, and some I didn't expect, Benji. Here they are with 60 Ks to go on the stage with about a 2-minute gap, 2.5-minute gap. Nielsen Palos on EF Education Nippo, Amador De Plus on Ineos, Lutsenko for Astana Premier Tech. I probably bet a bit too much money on him for the stage. Perez for Cofidis in the KOM jersey, Julien Bernard and Ellison for Trek, Thomas de Gent, David de la Cruz, Sam Bennett, and his teammate Catania, who, for the Koenig Quickstep, Dylan Turns and Gino Maida. Benji, can you explain why Paulus, Catania, or Cataneo, I don't know, Dylan Turns were in the break and it only kept within 2.5 minutes of Roglic?
I think it's double-sided. I think that on one end, the obvious conclusion is, well, they should be further on if they want to have an opportunity at winning the stage here, because somebody's going to care behind that. Somebody's in the breakaway on roughly 2.5, 3 minutes. Somebody will try and keep the gap low as a consequence. And I think that did play out quite a bit today, that the peloton kept them closer because those riders were involved. But it could also be kind of the opposite, that yesterday someone would lose more time than expected perhaps, and as a consequence yesterday evening or this morning after the race they realized, I'm not in the perfect position but I could still give it a try. And that's the only possible conclusion, I think, for it to be a decent tactic, because it can't really be a decent tactic if you make your way up to 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes on purpose and then already say, yeah, it's a target for me to be in the stage on this mountain stage to Colmiane, because then you're basically neutralizing the breakaway from the inside because somebody in the peloton is going to care. Somebody's going to try and keep it close. And today that was kind of the case.
Yeah, I think they needed 2.5 minutes at least on the climb. That being optimistic. You know how quickly these can come down at the end. And they weren't allowed that leash. Bora paced, Benji. Who else paced? I want you to bring up the roll of dishonor of non-Jumbo Visma teams that were pacing. Is it Bora, Bike Exchange, DSM, any others?
Honestly, I did not really keep track of the teams that were controlling the pace in the peloton. But the point being that there were so many teams that are not Jumbo-Visma here that were controlling the pace in the peloton, basically doing the work for Jumbo. Because Jumbo,
it was
they don't need to pace because they don't really care about Cataneo yet, unless it becomes like 5 minutes or something. Then they'll be like, oh, well, we're going to step in. But if everybody else starts pacing before that, and if everybody else starts keeping that gap low, then Roglic and the entire team of Jumbo just have to sit there and wait until the climb starts and then do their thing.
So that's what happened. The escapees were getting brought back because I think they were threatening the GC lead of Schachmann, Tischbenot, and Vlasov. So that's why they're all being brought back. Jumbo-Visma didn't care. Grisha Nierman shared on Twitter Jumbo-Visma's plan for today, and it literally was their plan. It was that they thought the other teams would be stupid enough to pace for them, and they did. And I'll go off at the end. I won't go off now. I'll hold it in Benji so we can actually tell the people the results, and they can switch off before I start shouting. Riders eventually began getting dropped out of that breakaway. 15 Ks left. They had a lead of 45 seconds. Paulus, Bernard, Elisond, Lutsenko, Catania, De La Cruz, and Maida were there. The strongest of those break initially. And I thought this was playing out just like Jebel Jais, Benji. Like exactly the same as Jebel Jais, UAE Tour Stage 5, where they bring the gap back a lot before the climb, but then the teams that were interested in bringing the gap back aren't actually that strong. Ineos, wink wink, for UAE Tour and maybe Tirreno, and they run out of riders, and then the gap just stays at like 45 seconds, and you're like, surely not. At what point did you think, Benji, hold on, they're not actually going to be able to bring these guys back unless Jumbo-Visma helps?
Yeah, it's exactly the moment you say when those riders for Schachmann and so forth are coming off the front or riding at a pace that is not really putting any dent into the time gap to the front, but also the fact that the people at the front aren't newbies at this. Lutsenko's won mountain stages. Mader got very close in the Vuelta last year. Elisond, he was the guy that launched Froome at the infamous 2018, well, the famous one actually. Infamous is a bit horribly sensed, but the famous stage in 2018 in the Giro, where Froome did that large solo. Turns is a good rider. He seemed to be a bit meh today, that he was falling off the back of the group and then came back, and then just a bit of a yo-yo effect. Jumbo had to pace, and this is the difference with the Vuelta, really, because in the Vuelta, I noticed that we basically had a situation where there was a stage, I think near the end, where Jumbo controlled the pace and nobody else really did anything. While Jumbo decided, we got to keep it on this amount of seconds. We're not going to go for the stage. We're just going to keep it at this margin, and we don't really care. We're just going to defend the jersey. But this is different because this is a one-week race, so it's not like they need to defend that yellow jersey with everything in their lives. They can play it a bit more playfully than in a Grand Tour. And I think that Roglic just said, well, we might as well try to win it because, we've got the people for it, and an extra victory is not too bad anyway. All the other teams brought us to the perfect footstep of actually doing it, so why not?
Well, if you don't care about the stage win, what's the best way to weaken the other teams? It's to force their domestiques to chase if they're going to do it for you. 15 Ks to 10 Ks, the gap goes out to 50, 55 seconds. Everyone's dropped out of the breakaway group. Lushenko looked like he had a cramp or cracked or something. I think if he stayed there, He could have won the stage. Well, I'm not saying he obviously wanted to stay there. I'm just saying whatever bad luck befell him probably cost him a real shot at this stage. Gino Mader, Paulus, and Elizondo were the only riders left. Bernard had been pacing Elizondo back to any. Lushenko had been attacking them because he was trying to get rid of Paulus. I think he thought that was the reason why they were being closed all the time. Simon Geschke, well, Cofidis were then pacing Benji. I was like, surely, well, actually, no, that's not true. Out of all the riders in that GC group, the only rider I thought could win an uphill sprint against Roglic is Guillaume Martin, like 5 to 8% chance, but still a chance. The others, no chance. But then Cofidis were pacing, and then Geschke attacked from their team, trying to bridge across. I need you, Benji. You're devil's advocate, Benji. What's he doing there?
My devil's advocate theory here is that at that point the break was roughly, I think, still 50 seconds or so before the peloton. So the gap was still pretty decent. And Geschke made that move. The other Cofidis rider went off the front at that very moment. And Geschke pretty easily bridged up to Teuns, who was on like 40 seconds of the lead at that moment. So 20 seconds ahead of the peloton. I was thinking perhaps it's a bit of a satellite rider idea or something. But the issue there is, well, they did put pressure on the other riders before launching Geschke as satellite riders, so that's pretty good for the theory. They did launch Geschke and have him in 20 seconds, that's perfect for the theory. But the entire flaw in that system is that Kruijswijk's still there. He's going to pace you down if you attack with Guillaume Martin.
But anyway, a bit of a weird move from Cofidis, pacing, then sending Geschke. Maybe they realised they couldn't do it on their own, or like, I don't feel like pacing for Roglic the whole time. So I really thought the breakaway had a chance to win. 8K, 7Ks, Jumbo-Visma started to do their Montegual pace. Or what was the stage, Benji? There was a Tour de France stage where they could have gone for the win. Maybe it was the Vuelta. And they were like,
stage where Vuelta was at the front for an entire time.
Yeah, and they let the gap go out from 1 minute to 3 minutes with the full strain. And I mean, they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't. Re-criticism. But anyway, they start letting the gap sort of drop out a little bit. Then they decide to increase the pace with Bennett with about 6Ks to go. It drops Gaudu, drops Pierre Latour out of the main group. Mader and Paulus go clear. Elizondo is dropped. And then with about 4.5Ks to go, Gino Mader, we saw him in Vuelta or Giro for NTT last year, Swiss rider. He attacked Paulus, or pretty much dropped him off the wheel. Peloton's got a 40-second gap. Well, he's got a 40-second gap on the Peloton. He still does a 4Ks to go. 3Ks to go. He's got a 35-second gap. And then Stefan Kruijswijk saunters up, someone I thought Jumbo-Visma should allow to go for the stage, just because. He saunters up to Bennett or Roglic and he says, do you feel like the stage today? I presume that's what he said. And Roglic must have said, sure, why not? And then
the accent.
Kruijswijk just went on the front and started drilling it, and I was like, oh no, this is I feel so bad. And then Roglic attacked before the Flamme Rouge, Benji. Kruijswijk pulled really hard, and then at the end of his pull, Roglic attacked with maybe 1,500 to go. There's still a gap of like 22 seconds. This is not a steep climb. I'm like, they're going to have to really surge to bring him back. Roglic Schachmann bridges to him. Roglic sits up, stops pulling. They got 600 meters to go, or maybe, 600 meters to go. And then I'm like, Mader's won. If they're all going to souplesse and look at each other, then Mader's going to win. They're literally not pedaling. Vlasov couldn't do anything, or Astana. And then Roglic is like, you know what? I'll just attack again for the bonus seconds. Surges, no one can respond. I think it was Schachmann, definitely Vlasov as well in that group. Lucas Hamilton too. And yeah, you've probably seen the images already, but Roglic surges past. Gino Mader's dying in the last 50 meters, and Roglic comes past him like a rocket, beating him in the last 30 meters. Absolute heartbreak for Gino Mader. Would that have been his first pro win, Benji?
I don't know, but I would guess so. And definitely on this level, I think that
Yeah.
despite this, I do think that this is better for Gino Mader in the long term.
Better for his notoriety.
Yeah. I think that Hirschi started off the Tour de France with that stage on the Périsur. No, was it the Périsur? No, it wasn't the Périsur. It was the Larun stage, Pour Larun, where he had the entire solo, and then Pogacar and such caught up with him, and he was beaten just in the last sprint after being alone until the last 3 kilometers. And this is very similar in the way that he gets beaten so close to the line, it's going to go into history for quite a bit. This is obviously way worse, but I think that a lot of people made Mader one of their favorites right now, and that a lot of people are going to support Mader in everything he does from this point. He does. Wow, English. So, I love it, which sounds horrible, but I love it. I think that
Benji, what about the people? Yeah. Are the people saying, "Oh, this is cruel from Roglic. The ASO release I got was merciless," which I guess it was. But people are saying it was mean and unsportsman. He shouldn't have done it. Are they the same people that say he should have paced for Wout van Aert and World Champs?
Probably, to be honest. I think that it's not very wise to say so. That it's good to say that you feel bad for Mader. It's good to say Roglic probably doesn't need it, but we all wanted Mader to win, I think, at that point, because it's like so close to the finish line, except for like hardcore Jumbo or Roglic fans would be like, oh, Roglic should have done it. But like, I agree that Roglic should have done it because, first of all, their team had been pacing on the entire climb. Would be pretty sad to then end up going second because the leader decided, I don't want to win this one. Won. Yeah, exactly.
That's what people don't get, Benji. Actually, Benji, get up, go make a coffee, come back. This could be a couple of minutes. Okay. For starters, Kruijswijk sacrifices his opportunity to go for a stage when he barely has any professional wins, none in the last 6 years, I don't think. So he's gone and paced for Roglic when he could have attacked. Kruijswijk, you can't tell me he didn't have fantastic legs today. And you can't have him do that if you're Roglic and then not go for the stage win or just go for the bonus seconds if you can. At least I don't think. He's also got an obligation to the sponsors, and sure, he'll probably get a bonus for this too. So would you forego however much money it is as well? This is a Paris stage win. Just because he's won a lot of them, if you're a winning person, you probably want to keep winning them. And it's also a competition. This is a race. I don't really believe in... I believe in gifts when riders have formed an arrangement which suits both of them, who is it, Contador with Scarponi, Benji? Or when riders, one works who's trying to get time on GC, or the other works for them and they let them have the stage. But this is different. Mader hasn't done anything for Roglic. And, I think the people, and my real rant, and the people that Twitter should be mad at, it's not Jumbo-Visma. It's not Roglic. It's every delusional team in the peloton today that thought pacing before this climb to bring back the break and not getting one of their riders in this break and then isolating their team leaders who, by the way, it's a very weak GC field and we don't have any... Do we have any other GC Grand Tour podium getters? I don't know, someone might fact check me. But the GC competition is Schachmann, Vlasov, and Yoni Zagira. And your teams, DSM, Bike Exchange, and Bora, you're going to pace, then leave Schachmann isolated for a lot of the climb, thinking what? You're going to beat Roglic on this climb? You're out of your fucking mind. So they are the teams that created this situation by chasing the breakaway. Also the teams like De Koenig and EF having riders targeting the break, then getting in the break with 2 minutes lead on GC, which kind of forced some of those teams to chase. They're all the teams that made the mistakes, Benji. Am I being too harsh? Are there some people saying, "Oh, well, you have to try. If you're Bora and DSM, you have to try." But like, what did they try, Benji?
I don't know. I didn't really listen. I was going to get a coffee, so
Oh,
I think
sorry,
I
sorry.
missed the entire argument here. Could you repeat it? Or
No, I can't repeat it. People have heard enough already. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like today you would have been better off if you were those teams putting a rider in a break and just letting the break win and keeping it relatively close. And
what?
the funniest moment for me, Benji, was when who was it pulling? Luis Leon Sanchez or Fraile?
Yeah,
And Bennett was just like, the pace isn't hot enough, buddy. And just it was humiliation.
yeah. I think that I also kind of want to talk about the other Bennett today because the other Bennett was in the breakaway for Cataneo, and I don't know, two teams that kind of flopped their strategies for me today were Ineos and the Koenig. The Koenig put Cataneo in the breakaway with that 2 minute and a half, 3 minute deficit in the GC before the stage. Bennett in there as well. Bennett partially because he could get sprint points at sprint gates potentially, because I think Roglic might actually be in green after winning this stage, which I'm going to check at this moment. Yes,
Yes, he
Roglic
is.
is in green, which
ASO
is
stage.
obviously not super great for Bennett now. But also he spent the entire last portion of the stage where he was in the breakaway pacing himself into a bloody grave. Honestly, quite crazy. On one end, it's great that he does this for a teammate after they've been working for him on multiple occasions. So I like that idea. But I don't see why, because there's no point. Cataneo's not the best climber in that breakaway. Cataneo's not going to stay ahead of the peloton with that gap from the climb. Then he kept on pacing still for like the first 2 kilometers in that group. Every single time he almost dropped, he went back to the back of the group, and then he just died at a certain point and dropped from the peloton as well afterwards, which is totally understandable. I don't know, weird strategy for me. Same with Ineos here. They got slaughtered here as well with two in the breakaway, the Plus and Amador. On good days, they're very strong, but today they were not near what they should be to be at all competitive in that breakaway group. And I was like, Amador looks like he's kind of waiting here because like he's looking back, he's not exactly trying to hold on in the breakaway too much. The Plus seemed to be having trouble, and they went to the peloton and they just dropped from the peloton. I was like, okay, Van Baal is still here. He's roughly 15th in GC. Perhaps they're gonna try and help him out in the peloton. Nope, they just didn't care. Just dropped from the peloton. Van Baal is still tried to stay on for the GC, but obviously that's not ideal. Obviously, their two leaders dropped out of the race, but still, like, weird strategies. Genuinely, I don't know what they were trying all day.
His results, Benji. Primoz Roglic first, Gino Mader second, Roglic taking the full 10-second GC bonus second compliment, allowing Mader to take the 6 seconds Galaxy Brain, taking 2 seconds away from Schachmann, who finished 5 seconds behind in third, Hamilton fourth, Vlasov fifth, 10 seconds back with Bernard, Guillaume Martin seventh with Izagirre, Van Hoeke, and Hindley coming 10th, 27 seconds back. Roglic extends his lead on GC out to 52 seconds on Schachmann. Vlasov leapfrogs his teammate Izagirre into third, a minute and 11 back. Do you think Roglic being like this, Benji, is a function of all the criticism about not gaining as much time as possible in the Tour last year when he has like the strongest legs?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure Roglic himself cares too much about it. It seems like he's pretty relaxed when he's riding, and I don't think he cares about social media stuff too much. But
but it's not just social media. It's not just social media. That's also like genuine criticism from even Tom Dumoulin within their team.
Yeah, I agree there. I agreed with the criticism. We gave it like before the races even started. And we said that they should hold it to that, and they didn't. And like perhaps that's a reason to it. Perhaps that's part of the reason that they do this stuff. But I also think that it's a bike race. He's being paid to win. He's gonna try to win. And unless it's a teammate that he's trying to gift or something, then it's understandable. But otherwise, it's difficult. Like if it was Pogacar, perhaps the friendship would have made it happen here. But it's not Pogacar.
If it's for Pogacar for the Tour de France in Stage 8, obviously, let him attack. That's fine.
And the Vuelta of
But
2019 as well.
but if we do have an excerpt, just so you can hear from the horse's mouth how much this stage meant to Roglic and what he was thinking with the attack.
You want to win every race, and again today you won a stage. It was important for you to win.
Well, yeah. Always, why not? If the team worked really, really well, and at the end there was a possibility, and I went for it.
All right, shout out to ASO for sending through that interview. That's pretty much wraps up our Pyrenees Stage 7 recap, Benji. Stage 8 tomorrow, the revised stage from Le Plan du Var to Levin, or maybe it's Le Plan du Var to Levin. 92.7 kilometers. That's got to be one of the shortest stages I've ever seen. It's kind of been nerfed. It's an uphill sprint finish. I got a rider who I think is pretty good at that to pick out. It's got two main climbs, or three rather, 4Ks at 3.5%, which really shouldn't be keeping anyone up at night. The finish is, I don't know the exact gradient. The last 500 meters is false flat downhill. Who you like for the stage, Benji?
Well, it's a bit like yesterday, isn't it? I think it's a bit of a combination here. I think this is less hard than the finish they had yesterday, which means that I would still have Roglic up there with one of the favorites for the stage, but I'm gonna go for Christophe Laporte. Matthews would be up there as well, but I'm gonna go with Christophe Laporte for this one.
That's a really good shout. If he was up there on stage 6, then there's no way this will be too hard for him.
No breakaway?
Pardon?
No breakaway, knowing that it's a 92-kilometer stage. Explosive possibilities on the first climbing section at the start of the day. Not very steep, but still.
I don't know. It depends. It depends who's in the break, because so many people are so close on GC. Like Gino Mader, Benji, he can't go on the break. He's like 2 minutes back on GC now. So he's like in 11th. So people are going to be kept on a pretty short leash. I think De Hent is a good chance. I wouldn't be surprised to see him again. If it comes down to a bunch sprint, Matthews, Laporte, I think. If they can't beat Roglic tomorrow, then questions need to be asked, I think. But what about Bennett, Benji? We mocked, I think, a lot of the takes about him for stage 6, but what about this sort of finish?
The difficulty is that he rode a solo out for Cataneo today, so that ruins a bit of his chances, but I still think that if Bennett is not having trouble from today, then he's got a possibility tomorrow. It's not like he can really completely die out on that final section, I think. I don't think the stage is hard enough for that. I believe Bennett can win as well.
Yeah, I'm just desperately trying to find some gradients for the last. Even the Pyrenees website's got the old finish, so sorry, we can't give you too much with the exact gradients. But yeah, I think Coquard, Benji. Maybe Lecoq could do well. Anyway, that's enough ribaldry from us. That was our Pyrenees Stage 7 recap and Stage 8 preview. GC, Benji, Roglic losing it. 20 seconds. How can Roglic lose GC tomorrow?
Crashing or having a puncture or something like that. Otherwise, it's impossible. And I hope it doesn't happen to him, because that would be a pretty poor way to lose a race.
Okay. No, I obviously hope that doesn't happen, but you don't think Jacqueline Turns and Co. can mount some sort of assault?
Well, it depends. If they can put a chain on his wheel or something, then they've got a chance. Otherwise, it won't happen.
Yeah. I mean, only a little bit needs to go wrong. Hey, Benji.
It's the rain.
Going into the final stage of a race, leading on GC by 52 seconds. It's eerily familiar. So it should be enough.
This is very different, though.
No. It's the same.
Okay,
I hope so. It'd be great for my highlight video. But no, I hope Rob gets it over the line. But anyway, that was our recap of Pyrenees Stage 7.